And that'll start the recording. And this is going to be number 11 of a Candid Conversation about systemic racism. And as we prepare to go live on Facebook, because it takes a little bit, I can actually edit this part later. So I'm just going to go live now. And I'm going to let people into the room. Yeah. And okay, so people, we have one more minute, but people are going to be coming into the room. We've already got one attendee. That's great. So hey, everybody, Misha Safran with my partner, Jodi Lewis. And I am a transformational life coach working as I've self-proclaimed myself as a heartstring healer. But tonight I'm just an American citizen, a Jewish lesbian woman who has organized with my partner these candid conversations about systemic racism. And we're delighted to have two wonderful, youthful guests. And before I introduce Lindsey and Cherish, I'll give Jodi a moment to introduce herself. So Jodi, feel free.
Hello, I'm Jodi Lewis. I am an attorney working for a nonprofit organization providing services for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And I'm very excited to be here tonight and hear words of wisdom from our panelists.
Yeah, sweet. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Lindsey Kirksey. Sorry, I'm terrible. Anyway, I'm not terrible. That's what happened. And Lindsey is an artist, singer, music producer, and entrepreneur. She is an undergraduate student activist and founder of a social justice organization on her campus. She's frustrated with COVID, aren't we all, and is plotting a return to campus next term. And so thank you for being here, Lindsey. And our second guest is Cherish Christoper. Cherish Christoper is a senior at York College of Pennsylvania, studying middle level education and with a specialty, I believe, an emphasis in social studies. Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can teach me a little bit, because that's been a hard one for me, but wonderful. So glad that you're both here. And those people who are watching on Facebook or here as panelists in the webinar, if you'd be so, we won't mention your first names, but if you'd be willing to just mention in the comments, you can put in the chat where you're watching from, what state you're in or what country you're in. If you're not in the US, we'd love to know where you're coming from. These webinars are live streamed into my Facebook group, and then they are uploaded to my YouTube account as well as to my podcast channel to give as much attention as social justice and the dismantling of white supremacy is needed. And unfortunately, I wish I could do more. But we are here hoping to give Lindsey and Cherish a voice. And most of the evening will be about them and whatever they want to say about systemic racism, their own personal experiences, how they feel as a result of the election, prior to the election, after the election, but we would definitely like to hear also from our attendees. We will not be bringing you on camera, but we would be entertaining questions that you all may have, or even if you just want to give accolades to Lindsey and Cherish. We do have an agreement with our guests that we want to support them in one form or another. So tonight we'll be telling you, and Lindsey will be telling you more about her business, which is super exciting. And then Cherish, we would like support in helping Cherish with her educational endeavors and her livelihood. So if you would like to make a donation, we're streamlining them into my Venmo account. I'm not a nonprofit. These are not tax deductible donations, but I just want to make sure that our panelists are taken care of because we don't want to take advantage of their time and have them here for free. So we will drop that Venmo account into the chat, and anybody is willing to donate to that. And I will be sure that the money gets to Cherish. And hopefully you guys will listen to Lindsey and hire Lindsey for her profession. It's so exciting. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of you. Want to say whatever you want to say. I do want to, I'm sorry, one more thing. If there's anything if you start to have some feelings that are challenging, I invite you all, us, to breathe, to take a pause. Silence is golden. We don't have to talk the entire time. If you need a break, if you need to breathe, if you're pissed off, if you're angry, sad, whatever, it's totally okay to feel all those feelings. You can cuss, you can you can not cuss, you can we just want to continue to have compassionate dialogue. But if you need a break, take a break and be in self-care. Okay. All right. So anyone who wants to say anything, we can just take a moment to have some pause and then say, but the floor is open for the two of you.
Well, I don't really know where to start. Let's talk about, I guess, post-election feelings.
I have to pause you for just a second. We've had a power outage 3 times already. I'm using my Verizon. So if it gets dark in here,
That's why.
That's why.
We have a storm going on.
It's a big storm.
Okay.
So, but yeah, go ahead. Now you can talk.
Sorry, the lights started flickering, so we wanted you all to know what was happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's not drugs. We're okay.
All right. Well, I personally have a lot of bittersweet feelings post-election. Very much, I'm glad that we don't have an entire fascist white supremacist in office. That's nice. But, you know, I feel like the way that I would like things to go, like I know that it can't happen all under one night. So it's just kind of gonna like be a longer process. So I feel like, you know, having Joe in office is not my original preference. However, you know, it's definitely better. And I feel like him and Kamala both have plans that can kind of progress us either back towards normal, but also like a little bit forward. So that's nice to just kind of know, you know, all our rights are in place and everything like that, and that we don't have to worry too much about that. So it's just kind of like, yay, we don't have a fascist, but like, you know, I wish we could still be doing more, and like the work's definitely not over. And so yeah, that's how I feel pretty much. Also a little worried about not really being able to tell if, you know, there will be a danger to like people of color and queer people. You know, I don't know if Trump supporters are planning riots and stuff. So yeah, so I just a little worried about that, but like it seems like things are okay as far as I know. I haven't heard much. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a scary and exciting time. I mean, it's interesting. It's definitely like, I think we talked about this, Lindsey, when your mom was on the panel. There's this coexistence, right, of excitement and fear and joy and pain, and it's a very challenging time.
Yeah, I definitely want to just kind of going off of what Lindsey said, kind of feeling the same thing. Like, I feel like in elections past, you know, there has always been like every election has been between the lesser of the two evils. So for me, this election was no different. But I think like the thing that was most important for me was like the amount, just like the sheer number of voter turnout that we see in this election. Like it was amazing, and we didn't see that turnout last election. So I feel like people going out and voting and seeing that their vote mattered and that they were able to do something and it was good. Like, this will mobilize people to want to continue voting, which I think is extremely important, especially from people in that 18 to 24 range, because that's where we see like a lot of people not voting. And so I think this election did a lot for empowering people to go out and use their vote. Yeah, use their vote for good. I do agree that it is a scary time, just being a person of color, being queer, you know, all of those good things. It's like with the election, it felt like you could finally take a breath of fresh air, but then like there was new fear instilled in you, because you're just like, well, what are these people going to do now that, you know, their leader is no longer in charge? And so it's just been a weird dynamic and operating that has been just like super, it's like every day I wake up and I take like a huge breath of fresh air, but then there's also that fear being reinstilled into me, like, all right, you know, let me walk on eggshells, so I make sure that, like, you know, I'm not doing the wrong thing, I'm not acting too Black, I'm not acting too queer, so I don't make myself a target. And I think like post-election, that's kind of been the thing that's been on my mind the most.
So oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Cherish. Absolutely understand that. I think what you said too, it's interesting. I mean, maybe Jodi wants to share this, but when she was driving after work one day through, we live near Scranton, you know, there was this elation of, oh my goodness, finally, you know, Biden-Harris had 270, right? And yet,
So there about 3 or 4 different corners, there were fairly significant number of people out, you know, saying that the voter fraud has happened and Trump needs to remain in power, and who are not hollering for Trump, and people were beeping horns as they were going by and so forth. So I think you're right regarding this period of, yay, you know, Biden and Harris won, and yet what's still going to happen?
yeah.
I'm also curious how you all feel. It was interesting, Lindsey, you use the word things returning to normal. Misha and I recently had watched a clip that was sent to us regarding how Trump, yeah, he's been a problem, right? And he has done so many things. He has permitted people to be more overt in their racism. But racism and systemic oppression existed well before Trump and has been ongoing. So it's interesting when you're saying return to normal. What does that mean for you, and what direction do you think this country can go in, given the length of time you all, you know, Blacks and African Americans and other minorities have been oppressed?
For me, when I was talking about normal, I meant strictly politically, like as far as having a president in office that's not going to try to have crazy bans and stuff on like things and actually like do his job and like make laws about things that matter or protect laws and protect things like that. So that's what I mean is like strictly politically, like you're not having a politician that's just like spewing all of this garbage. I mean, politicians are politicians, but like, you know, as opposed to Trump, who's like, he is like just having someone who's just actually going to be doing things. Is basically what I meant. As far as socially, um, there's no going back to normal for lots of reasons. But as far as like the extra overt racism that has been emboldened by Trump, I don't really see that changing anytime soon, because it was kind of like things were still happening. There was still plenty of police brutality. There was still plenty of ignoring the problems of systemic racism. But, you know, it would have been much easier to make progress with what we had at that point. But now it's gonna be so much harder because people are just like no longer ashamed, and they just it's gone back to like the 50s or something like that, with the way that people will act out just out with each other. So I don't I don't know where I see that going. I really don't. All I know for myself is that I'm going to do what I can when I can and when I feel like it to educate people, try to help them understand things so that they can help the people of color in their lives, and as well as just do what I can to keep myself safe. So, yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah,
go ahead, Cherish. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, going off of that, for me, like the sense of normalcy, like really, I mean, because like you said, like systematic oppression and racism, this is like nothing new for the country, for people who have been partaking and perpetuating it, and people have been experiencing it. And so I think that like a lot of like this like sense of normalcy that we're expecting is for like those racists to go back into hiding, and for them to like throw their rocks and like hide their hands after they've done it. But I don't think that that's going to happen. People have been living out and proud with their racism and their bigotry for 4 years, and they've expected to do it for another 4 years. And I don't think people are ready to go back into hiding it. So I think this is going to be a really tough time politically, just because people are going to be extremely divided. Like the election, you know, didn't just like divide people based on political views, like it divided people just in general based off of like morals and all that other stuff. And so I think like what's going to happen is that people are going to continue to fight for their rights, and it's not going to be a quiet conversation like it has been before. People are going to be a lot more loud and proud about it, which I think will do, you know, it'll do some justice in the long run. I think that exposing people to, you know, the way that systematic oppression and racism is affecting them will make it a little bit more tangible for people's, with the hope that, you know, they will take that knowledge and like do better. The other side of that though is it's gonna not be a pretty fight. Like there's gonna be, you know, unfortunately a lot of violence that happens because of this, and it's just gonna be one of those tough periods in history that we have to fight through, you know, to get a real sense of normalcy, which will be people being treated with like an ounce of respect based off of their identities.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fear around the way people. I mean, there, you know, it's interesting. There's fear both ways. If people were to go back into hiding, then you're questioning, you know, just like we've seen in the last 4 years. Holy crap, where these people come from? And yet, if they don't go into hiding, you know, we're talking about. I mean, thinking about the, oh, where was it? Kenosha, where the 17-year-old killed two
Yeah.
protesters. You know, and they didn't even kill, well, this, I don't know, so they just killed anybody, really. It wasn't like there was this, it was just the idea that it was progressive, it was liberal, and everybody was fighting for Black Lives Matter. And so therefore they could shoot anybody. And it was just ridiculous. I mean, not that it's ever okay to shoot anybody. So I think you're right. There's fear either way. And I agree with you that it's not a time where people are going to start going back into hiding under their rocks. It's not a very nice thing to say, is it? But anyways, yeah, I mean, it's the way it was. And he's definitely opened up I'm not going to say Trump has opened up the passage for people to be openly racist. Jodi and I have been reading an article. It's a 20-page article, so I'm not quite done with it yet. She's almost done with it, but it actually talks about the whole enslavement movement. And it talks about how people of color, Black people, led the way for social justice. That all the people who are now lesbian, disabled women, all of those groups, which I think the four of us participate in a few of them, but their battleground was created by Black people seeking freedom from slavery.
100%.
Yeah, right. And so the question is, and this is why I wanted to give the microphone to people of color, to Black people, is what do you see as your role in your freedom? And what do you see as our role in our freedom? And how do we come together? It's an interesting question, but I mean, because I don't see your role as being a teacher to white people. I'm Jewish. I had family with numbers on their arms who died in the concentration camps and who actually survived the concentration camps. I'm a woman. I'm lesbian, and you know, so I have a lot of different pieces, but I'm not Black. And so I can never say that I understand what you experience. I have a lot more experiences with racism and discrimination because of my skin tone than Jodi does. And then you have far more than I do. That doesn't make any of it okay. But I can be, just because I have a little, I can't say I understand what you experience every day. So back to the question, or not back to the question, wherever you want to take it.
My personal, the way that I see roles, I feel like some Black people personally decide to take on the role of educator, whether that be just by like, bringing things to people's eyes or actually educating and explaining. I personally, I don't know. I like educating people. I don't know if I would consider myself an educator or not. But I really do like educating people because I feel like a lot of people, like, they want to have their hearts in the right place, but they don't know what's going on and they don't know where to look, or like anything. So I personally, like, if I feel like someone has their heart in the right place, I would love to educate them. But that's a choice that I make. But I don't think that's my role. I think it's a choice that I make.
Awesome.
I definitely feel like since there has been many Black people who have taken on that role and written books, articles, are still writing books and articles and all types of different things, making videos, doing all types of different things. There is that education from Black people, because we tell white people, it's not our job to teach you, it's your job to learn for yourself. But also you need to learn from Black people. So some people are like, oh, well, then what am I supposed to do? That's all these juxtapositions. Well, there's plenty of Black people who've already done that work. Go buy their books, go support them while you're learning, stuff like that. So I feel like the role of white people is to do that, buy these Black people's books, or read their articles or whatever, educate yourself from Black sources, and then take that and educate the white people around you. That's what I think as far as roles. That's white people's roles, and Black people's roles is to make noise, like, just kind of, as we've always done, like you were mentioning before. Pretty much every movement has been started by Black people in this country. I can't really speak for other countries, but as far as this country goes, most, if not all, have been started by Black people, especially queer women of color and queer other gendered people of color, have just been on the forefront, where the main ones were closest to the bottom of the barrel, along with a couple other types of people. So like, we're just leading the way, and I feel like that kind of is our role, in the sense that it would not be right for white people to lead the way. Like, it's white people's jobs to fix it, but it's not their job to lead the way and talk over us. Like, our voices need to be heard. So our job is to make our voices heard. Our job is to speak up and, like, make it known. And to then take that voice and tell white people that it's your job to fix it. This is what we want you to fix. You need to listen to us to tell you what we want you to fix, but it's your job to fix it. That's basically how I see all of the roles.
Thank you. Yeah.
I consider myself to be an educator, literally because I'm going to school to be a teacher, but also because that's kind of like what I do every day is educate. And at first I was in this weird period where I was like, I don't want to have to educate. It's really exhausting to have to explain to people why I deserve rights, why my existence deserves to be respected. And it's also really frustrating talking to brick walls of people who like say that they want to know, but then they don't really want to know, and they defend, every problematic thing that they've ever done to make themselves feel better, but they don't really want to take the time to ruminate and, dismantle or work to dismantle their implicit bias. And so I feel like my role is to be that educator. And so I've taken that leap of faith and have started doing it. And it's really important for me as a future educator to do that, because, I kind of have this theory that, if teachers get more involved in social movements, they'll be able to, elicit more change because they're deeply connected. And social change affects, teachers and educators and students so greatly. And so I want to be the teacher to get involved in social change and see what I can do. And so, yeah, I've done a lot of different things. I can't even tell you how many times I've read books, just educating myself. And I've also, just this summer, I wrote a piece with one of my professors about how systematic racism has affected education and how deeply racist education is. And I feel like with all that work and time and effort that I'm putting into doing those things, I think the role of white people is to listen and uplift those voices, because like you said, oftentimes, Black voices are silenced. And, it's a known fact that peers learn from peers the best. And so if white people are taking the information that we're giving them and spreading it to their peers, the likelihood of them retaining that information, actually acting on it, to do something to dismantle white supremacy, because like Lindsey said, it's not the job of the oppressed to, fix the issues of the oppressor. I think that could do a lot for, just making strides in the right direction as far as social change goes. Yeah.
I love what you said about the teachers being involved in social movements. I never thought of that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'd really be interested in reading your paper,
Yeah,
Cherish.
I was gonna say, can you put it, is there a link or something to it that you could?
Yes, I do think I actually have a link. I have to figure out how to put it in the chat, but I definitely will do that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and what I can do also, just for the people who are listening, I will look for it, but I have 2 resources that I provide. It'll come out in an email actually after the webinar. There's a document that I created with help of other people, of articles, podcasts, books, charities that raise the Black voices. And then there's another one that was created by someone else, a scaffolding document that I'll be putting into the chat, but also, again, people who are attending the webinar, and then also Lindsey and Cherish, I'm happy to send these to you guys as well. And you guys, I always feel funny when I say you guys. Anyways, so if you have things you see that need to be added to my list, I'd be happy to hear what that is. But it's exactly what you're both talking about, giving the opportunity for white people and other races to educate themselves so that they can be supportive. And I totally agree that it is the white population's job to fix this, because the white people created this from the very beginning. But I also believe that if we're not listening to Black people, then we're not fixing the right thing,
right?
Or we won't know what we should be fixing.
Yeah.
There is the question, where can we find the pre-recording of these webinars? Thank you for asking that question. I will be putting in, well, first of all, in the email that you get after having attended the webinar, there'll be a link to my YouTube channel. And then also, I can give some other ways, but usually it's on YouTube, or you can friend me on Facebook, because we stream live into my Facebook page. Thank you for that question. Did you have another, was there anything that came to mind for the 2 of you as we were saying those things?
There was something, but I forgot what it was. So
that's allowed.
You'll think of it.
Yeah, if it comes to you, you can interrupt. Say.
Yeah, I would love to hear from both of you as young Black women. There's been a lot of articles regarding how Black women are overlooked. We had Breonna Taylor, there was so much around George Floyd, and some of that was because it was so visual. There was a video that went out and everyone saw what was happening. But the facts around what happened with Breonna Taylor were horrible. And there was a lot of silence around there, although a lot of people did stuff. And there was a lot just generally how Black women have really been the movers, right? The movers and shakers behind Black Lives Matters and other movements, yet they're excluded from the news and coverage. Do you have any thoughts regarding that, or anything you want to state regarding that as young women?
I mean, I feel like it's very apparent that Black women have oftentimes been overlooked in social movements. I know I was talking to a good friend of mine, Jalen, and he was telling me about how like difficult it was for him when he was taking this multicultural psychology class, and they were talking about like Martin Luther King and like everything Martin Luther King did for the civil rights movement. And, you know, we know Rosa Parks is the woman who sat on the bus and like refused to get up, but Rosa Parks actually did so much more than just the whole sitting on the bus ordeal that we see and have been seeing time and time and time again, and have been taught to us time and time and time again. And so I think that, like, I mean, I don't know, as a you know, Black femme, it's really hard for me to, I feel like it's really hard for me to like find my footing in social movements in general. Just because, you know, it's really easy to come off as like the angry Black woman, and that's oftentimes how I come off. And for a long time, I tried really hard to doctor the way that I acted and tried to come off as more palatable for people. But the reality of the situation is, I am a mad Black woman, and I have every right to be. And so I have been trying really hard to not so much edit the way that I act when it comes to, you know, getting involved in social movements and stuff like that, just because, you know, I'm tired of being told that I need to be tamed because it's not fair to me. And I am just trying really hard to be my authentic self when it comes to promoting change, because I think that that's the only way that stuff's going to get done. You know, I think about all the strong, powerful Black women before me who's done so much to change things, and they, you know, I don't know, it makes me think of that quote, good women seldom make change, or whatever the quote is. It's something along the lines of that. And it makes me not want to be as prim and proper as I've been taught to be. And it makes me want to be more loud and vocal, especially with the Breonna Taylor thing. Like, that was just extremely unsettling, how easy it was for people to just like kind of forget that that existed. I don't know if people like genuinely forgot about it just because, you know, like you said, George Floyd was a lot more tangible. It was in the news, there was a video and stuff like that. Or people didn't see it as a serious because, you know, we've seen multiple times, you know, unarmed Black men being gunned down in the street by police or just experiencing police brutality, but we don't see that same imagery surrounding Black women, even though it does happen to Black women. So I think, I don't know, it's just this weird space that I feel like I'm in, you know, trying to, you know, make sure that, you know, the Black femme voice is heard, and just like, you know, Black women are getting their time to say what they have to say. And I feel like I'm also just trying to get down to the bottom of why it's so easy to forget that Black women exist and that our issues are here. Yeah.
Cheers. I think you raise a really good point there regarding that your voice, right? And because you don't fit into what the white lens has said as far as how you have to act, you can't be who you are. And there's that stereotype regarding the angry Black woman, which is just not okay. And and your voices become suppressed because you're trying to fit into a mold that's not your mold to fit into. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and yes, you have every right to be angry.
Absolutely.
And I think women in general are not supposed to be angry. But then a Black woman, when you're angry, you know, like it's a bull in a china shop or something, and people just don't know how to handle it, which is so, this is like not very good expression, not okay. It's just not okay. You know, it's very dismissive and degrading. And there's a lot of anger, and justified anger. Absolutely. And I love what you're saying about, you know, how you're wanting to be you are an educator, you want to be an educator, you want to be in the social justice movement. And with that, you want to be heard. And you don't want to have to change who you are to be heard.
Yeah. And I think, you know, being an educator, and I feel like teachers in general have this cookie cutter mold that we're supposed to fit into. You know, our job is to be in the schools and teach kids, and that's it. We're not really allowed to express our political views and like how we feel about things that's going on in the nation, because we don't want to be seen as controversial or political. And, you know, I have all these professors telling me that, and I'm just sitting here in class thinking, like, isn't education as a whole political? Like, isn't it inherently political just because everything that happens, you know, on Capitol Hill, it affects us directly, because, you know, education is one of those things out there in the the decision-making room fighting about. So I don't know, I feel like it does a disservice to not be educated on stuff like that and to not be routinely talking about that. And also, our jobs are to expose kids to differing points of view. And if that involves talking about, you know, why Black Lives Matter, you know, why, you know, we need to be educated on LGBTQ rights, and it's my job to do that to them. It's my job to give them that exposure. So, yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I don't know if you know this, I've been a teacher for 30 years. I've taught middle school, high school, community college. And when the shooting happened at Columbine High School, I was teaching middle school and my students were pretty upset. And I ended up having circle time, because we would do that every once in a while, where we push the chairs back and we all sit down and we talk about what's real right now. And I got in trouble for it, because I was supposed to bring politics into the classroom. And I was told that I left the kids without much time or ability to process what they had experienced. But when I talked to the kids, they were like, no, thank God you did that. Thank you so much. So it was the perception of other teachers when the kids came out of my classroom that they were a mess, when in reality, the students felt so relieved that it got talked about. So it's interesting how, as educators, I mean, it is a fine line. We do have to be careful, and you know, it's sometimes real talk is important. It's not saying you should vote for Trump or you should vote for Biden. It's saying this is my experience with racism, or this is my experience with gun control or lack thereof, right? And then diving into the different pieces of education that create a whole system. But yeah.
I feel like it would have been a disservice to the students to not do that little circle time thing, because I'm not an educator, like I'm not like in education like Cherish is or anything like that. I'm more like optional education when I feel like it. But like hearing what everyone's saying just has me thinking about it and forming some opinions. And like I've always thought that when it comes to just regular old education, like schools should be teaching you how to live in life, like how to go out in the real world. Like, what is the point of educating if that's not one of the main things you're educating about? How do you sustain yourself in the world that we live in? How do you pay for a house and a car and taxes and stuff like that? Like, that's none of that is taught yet. We're expected to just know it and figure it out ourselves. Like, if we're supposed to learn it, why aren't we learning it in school? But with stuff like that, like school shootings and things, it would be terrible to have that all over the news, all of these kids, especially the really little ones, scared for their lives, and they don't know like what's going on, or even the older ones who do know what's going on, so they're probably even more scared. And then just go to school like nothing happened, especially like schools that are close to other school shootings and things like that. Like to just go about it and try to be prim and proper and pretend like it didn't happen because you're not supposed to bring politics into it. I feel like people recently like really misconstrue the difference between politics and morals. And that's one of them. Like your thoughts about gun control as a government thing, that's political, but your thoughts about, hey, like people maybe shouldn't shoot up schools is just a morals at that point. And it should be talked about because like these kids need somewhere to put that. And like kids have homes and stuff, but you have no idea what they're teaching them, and you spend like probably 40 maybe more hours a week at school, from like kindergarten to high school. So what you're learning there
You don't even
matters.
when they get home, they're having those conversations.
Yeah. So like if they're not, it's important to have them, but even if they are, it's just like that's such a huge chunk of your time. So if you're going to be there, it should count. And you should talk about things that matter, and to expect teachers to just like not say anything, because I have this old English teacher, and she's always been very progressive, very like pro LGBT and stuff like that. Um she didn't necessarily hide it, like in the sense that like there I went to an art school, so there's gays everywhere. And
We're everywhere.
yeah, so like um she didn't I don't know, I don't remember exactly how, but she just kind of like showed her support, like in whatever way was appropriate there. But like on social media, like once we all graduated, we like got to follow her and stuff, and she's got political stuff everywhere. She's always posting political things on her social media, and I think that's good. And I think like like Cherish said, like teachers should do that and be allowed to do that and stuff like that, because like if like say like kids don't feel comfortable confiding in their parents, a lot of kids feel really comfortable confiding in their teachers. And so if you have a teacher who's really progressive, pro LGBT, pro Black Lives Matter, and you're like really struggling with things and you feel like you can't talk to your parents about it, like you can go to that teacher. And like I don't know, I think it would be a disservice to students everywhere to pretend like politics is not something that should be talked about in the classroom, or it's taboo or whatever, because politics and morals are just straight up crossing over now. Like it's not even about politics anymore, most of the time. So yeah.
What you're saying right now is like super triggering for me, thinking about you two women, because when I think about what I've allowed my students to talk about and express, and I think about you and how many countless times a Black person has been murdered and how many countless times you don't get to talk about it. Like I've got chills all the way up my body, just feeling like, what is wrong with our country? I mean, you don't have, well, I don't know what you have and what you don't have. What I perceive is that the elephant is in the room and nobody talks about it. And this is why we haven't had a whole lot of conversation around Breonna Taylor. This is why we haven't had changes in reforming the police and having a different kind of system. This is why we haven't had the prison to pipeline shift back to, hell, let's help these people, all people. And so you just, this small, it's not small, but this small piece of big things happening in the world and not talking about it is so relative, at least from my viewpoint. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, in what you're dealing with every day of a Black person's life. Am I wrong?
And no, you're right. Especially like for me, I struggle with it a lot. Just because like stuff like it affects me so deeply, especially when it's an unarmed Black man laying in the middle of the street. I have 4 brothers and I am very close to all of them. And so every time it happens, like I text them and I'm just like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Are you going on? Are you seeing what's happening? And every time I remind them, you know, like, hey, make sure you're being careful. You like, you know, don't go, especially my younger brother, because, you know, he's a little bit of a hothead. And so I have to remind him all the time, like, you know, make sure, like, I know, you know, you don't want to feel like you have to concede to do something to please somebody or to feel less than. But at this point, it's not about feeling less than. This is like your life on the line here. And so having to continuously have those conversations, like it just like sends me back into the memories that I had as a kid with my mom, having her explain the same things to me. And it's like I'm continuing on, you know, with her legacy. And it's like nothing has changed from when I was, you know, 5, 6 years old talking to my mom about that, and me being 23 and having those same conversations with, you know, my brothers, because I'm genuinely afraid for the way that they're going to be perceived and what's going to happen to them. And, you know, at this point, it's not even just police that I fear for. We saw Ahmaud Arbery and what happened with him. Like, it's just regular, everyday people, everyday white people, honestly, that I have to feel like I have to protect them from. And so not being able to talk about that, it weighs heavily on my mind every day. And I go to a PWI, and it's a very conservative area, York, PA is. And so it's like I can never escape it. And I can't be too vocal about it because I don't want to put a target on my back. But I also don't want to feel like I have to hide it, because this is important information that I feel like everybody should be like listening to and talking about. And people aren't doing it. And so I feel it's just a very isolating experience as a whole. Like, you know, confiding in people and finding people who actually want to listen to you and listen to your experience so that they can, you know, take that and do better with it, as opposed to just like, you know, saying racism ended hundreds of years ago. Why are you still upset? You weren't a slave. Why are you so upset? And it's just like, that is the rhetoric that I'm surrounded by 24/7. And that combined with what's going on and just like politics and stuff like that, it's extremely exhausting. And it really just has me thinking sometimes, like, you know, why am I even putting myself through this? But then I get to do conversations like this, and it's just like, well, it's worth it, because, you know, hopefully somebody walks away hearing something that I said and that changes something in them to do better. So yeah, it's always a constant back and forth struggle that I feel like I'm going through with myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that and know that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we go to the same school, even though I'm at home right now. And I just second all of that pretty much. It's like we have a really good like intercultural office that like tries to do like lots of things with us, like events and stuff like that, and promote our groups and things. But it's really all up to the students to come and decide that they want to learn. So
Not come because they're getting pizza or a t-shirt, right?
yeah, because we don't have either of those. So it's like literally they just would have to come for the sake of wanting to know what's going on.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to work with that when we are in the area that we are, and so much of the school is dominated by certain mindsets. Sorry, I have hairs on my
Yeah,
face. And
we're the queen of hairs.
there you
I
go.
can't tell you what happens here.
But yeah, so it's kind of rough trying to do this type of stuff there, but at the same time, like there are people who like do want to learn and stuff, so it's it's a lot of give and take.
Yeah, and I think to pivot just a little bit, like with all of that, like taking into consideration, like I don't know, I feel like with me being as loud and as vocal as I am on campus, I then become like a token. Like everybody wants to include me in everything because they know that like I have a lot to say. Um, I'm also very loud about being a person of color, and I love being Black. It's like one of my favorite things about myself. And so they see that as an opportunity to like put me in front of the camera and talk about like diversity and stuff like that to make my school seem more inclusive, when in reality, it's not very inclusive at all. And it's overwhelming because I get that exposure all the time. And I'd say I'm one of those people that white people feel like they can flock to me because I'll teach them something about, racism, and just generally equality as a whole. But I find like when I'm in like settings where I'm around like-minded individuals and I can actually like, you know, talk about these things and not feel like a token, nobody really listens to me because these white people who consider themselves to be activists, when the extent of their activism is just posting a Black square on social media, like those are the people who are the face of these social movements. And so it's just constantly like a weird struggle and a weird like back and forth that I'm in, kind of the theme of the night. And yeah, I don't know, it's like I don't want to be that token for my school to just essentially like use for free. But then also I'm just like, nobody's gonna hear what I have to say if I don't do those things, because I don't really have a place in the movement that's surrounded, around my people getting the rights that we deserve. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like things are just constantly just so in a gray area. And this kind of goes back to the question you were talking about earlier about like what white people can do to progress these social movements. And one of the things that, I always tell my like white peers is that, you need to figure out why you're doing this and why this is important for you, because this is just not a trend for me. This is my existence. This is my friend's existence, my family existence. And so this is extremely important for me. If you're just doing this because you don't want to seem racist, this is not the movement for you. And we don't need you here. So yeah, that was a random little tangent, but that just made me think about just a whole slew of things that just started running through my mind.
I think that's really poignant though, Cherish. I think that, we've been talking to a lot of people over the last several months. And yes, I wish it had been earlier than that. And I was also raising 5 kids, but I'm not making excuses. There's been a lot going on. But in the last several months, the conversations we've been having with people are figure out why you're doing it and then come up with sustainable action so that you don't just give up. It's not a fad. It's not just a trend. This is a serious problem in our country and has been for over 400 years. Like you said earlier, this is not new. I think Lindsey said it. And so, and with that, because I get very concerned about my friends and people of color in my community. Your mom actually, Lindsey, I think said it last time, is not only is there this angry Black woman concept, but the strong Black woman that you can stand up and hold your own and you don't need other people. But what do you do when you need to cry, when you're feeling anxiety and stress and frustration? Oh, you're supposed to suck it up, just like mothers are supposed to suck it up and hold tight, right? And so what I hear you saying is really, really important, that people need to decide, why are you here? What are you fighting for? Why are you fighting for it? And how are you going to keep it up if you are going to be in the fight? Because it is a fight. It's an educational fight. It's a political fight. It's a spiritual fight. It's a moral fight. I mean, it's a personal fight. Absolutely a personal fight.
And I don't think people like to have those conversations when it talks about like getting personal. Like, I feel like people think that when you're getting involved with movements and stuff like this, it's a very like selfless act, which to an extent it is. But like I said, like this isn't something that I can just turn off and turn on. Like, even if I completely decided to ignore everything going on surrounding social change and I just wanted to operate my life pretending like none of that existed, to an I'm still gonna have to be faced with it every day. And so, when I challenge my white peers and I ask them like, why do you care so much about this? Like, where's all of this coming from? And my response is, the response is, I just think it's wrong. It's like, okay, well, yeah, it's wrong, but why else are you getting involved in this? And I know that there's like this kind of like controversial concept or this controversial idea that like you should just be accepting help from whoever. And it's like, no, not necessarily, because that's why these movements have been so stagnant, because the wrong people have been getting involved and they wear it as a badge of honor, being like, I'm a white person who believes in Black Lives Matter. And it's just like, this shouldn't be something that you should be flaunting and parading around and wearing as, this identity and like giving yourself this category as like a good white person. Like, this should be something that you care about and are doing the work to constantly, fight for all the time, not just when the camera's on you, not just when you're surrounded by a group of your peers and you want to brag. Like, this is an everyday thing for people who look like me, and it should be an everyday thing if you are saying that you care about it too.
Absolutely.
That reminds me of something like the trend that's going around kind of like white people like around our age who are like talking about like going home to their like conservative families for like Thanksgiving dinner and how am I going to ruin Thanksgiving dinner, lol, or how am I going to piss off my parents, lol. And like one of the things they'll throw around is like, oh, let me take like my Black Lives Matter stickers or my Black Lives Matter flag, or like tell them that I believe in Black Lives Matter. And like, ha ha ha, that's going to piss them off, like ha ha ha. And it's like, see, I would be so thrilled that you support our movement, but like you don't get to just flaunt it around to piss off your conservative parents. Like, don't just flaunt it around just to be like, oh, I'm not a terrible person. See, I think you should be alive, but also let me criticize everything that you do and like how you react to trauma and how I don't think you should do this and I don't think you should do that. And like basically be the same as the oppressor, except I have a Black Lives Matter profile picture. Like, I feel like that's not talked about enough because that gets on my nerves, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think taking it back to like the whole election too, I think people started to like it kind of the same with like putting Black Lives Matter on your social media bio or whatever. Like, people are doing the same thing about, voting for Joe Biden and stuff like that. And it's just like, where were you when we needed Trump to not be in office in 2016? You weren't here. But now that you saw how horrible things have been for people of color, all of a sudden you want to be involved. And it just makes me question like these people's like motives to get involved now, because prior, when we were warning you that Trump was a bad idea for minorities, when Trump was a bad idea for queer people, when Trump was a bad idea for immigrants, you guys didn't listen. But now, after we've been hooting and hollering for 4 years about how awful this person is, now you want to get involved. It's like, had we had you in 2016, we wouldn't even been here.
Yeah, and that's a really, it's a good question and it's a hard question, because from different panelists that we've had, some people are like, but they're here now. And that's what's really important. And then other people are like, you missed the boat. You should have been here 4 years ago or 150 years ago or whatever it is, right? So it's like, how do we, like, I don't know, I don't think I've shared the story with you, Lindsey, and your mom, but I went to a protest in, gosh, it was while Obama was president. I'm trying to remember. Anyways, it was in Oakland, California, where I lived. And it was a Black Lives Matter protest. And I went because I was able to go and I wanted to go. And this one woman came up to speak. She's a Black woman, very feisty, fierce. I mean, she was talking. And then all of a sudden she said, how many white people are here? Raise your hand if you're here. White people, raise your hand. So we raised our hands. I was like kind of slowly moving my hand up, trying to figure out, do I raise my hand? Like, and she said, what do you want, a trophy? You want a trophy for showing up? And at first I was like, what the fuck? But then I stood there, and I was like, oh man, this is uncomfortable. Oh, I don't like how this feels. Oh, she's doing this intentionally. I got to feel this. I could feel my energy, everything in my body wanting me to run home. Like, I don't want to be here. And then another part of me was like, okay, I can get through this. I'm still here to support this movement. But there are a lot of people who would have left, totally would have left, because they were getting called out. Like, what do you want? Brownie points, a trophy? What is your purpose for being here? And it's exactly what you're saying, Cherish. Like, know why you're here and be here and keep being here. And and you have discomfort every day, right? You just shared that. So hello, it's uncomfortable, but guess what? We need to live and exist with our discomfort. Not that it's going to always be the same.
That goes like with what I was saying when I was on here the other week with my mom about the whole white fragility thing. Except I'm going to expand on it a little bit based on what you said about how basically, yeah, when you're like, some people are like, well, I'm glad you're here now. And some people are like, well, you missed the boat. I feel somewhere in between. Like, I understand and feel both things. But what I feel more is that it doesn't really matter which way a Black person feels, whether they're like, oh, well, I'm just glad you're here now, or whether they're like, well, you missed the boat, you should have been here sooner. It shouldn't matter. Like, as a white person, it shouldn't matter to you which way that Black person feels. You should want to stay regardless. And if a Black person is going to say, like that lady at the march, like, do you want a cookie? Because I know a lot of us say that a lot because that's how we feel. It's like so many people act like they want a cookie. They're like, I support Black Lives Matter. Where's my cookie? It's like, I don't, you should. That's the bare minimum. What are you going to do next? And then they're all like, oh, well, like, I feel so bad. Like, they're just like so mad at me. Like, if your support of Black Lives Matter or your support of Black people and the movement is conditional to us being nice to you, then you're not really supporting the movement. You're just looking for brownie points and you're just looking to not look like a bigot. So if you're going to be mad if a Black person corrects you or tells you that we're not giving you a brownie, but you still better be here, then you really have to do a lot of self-examination and look into like your like white fragility, white guilt, because it's just, that's not helpful to anyone.
Right.
It's just as helpful as you not being there at all. So you might as well just like take a step back, get out of your emotions, realize this like minimal discomfort is like this much compared to like what we go through on a regular basis, and you should be able to brave that to help people like have the right to live. So
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I mentioned, are we getting pizza and a t-shirt for doing what we're doing? All these different things all over our country, there's always a prize to participate. And it's like, that is not, yeah. So there's that one piece, but then also I agree. If a Black woman says to me, what do you want, a trophy? Guess what? She's allowed to have her feelings. And I don't have to say, yeah, I want a trophy, because I don't. But the fact of the matter is I'm allowed to have my feelings. And they're allowed to have their feelings, whether they're excited I'm there or they're pissed off that I'm there or they're glad that I'm there, but pissed off at the same time. It all gets to happen. And I think that what we're touching on right now is really critical piece of white people being activists, is being willing to understand that there are angry people out there, and that it may not be that Lindsey, you are pissed off at me specifically, but you're not happy with white people and their apathy, and their participation for the benefit or for the trend or for the fad or for the cookie.
Yeah. And I think that, like, because I also say things like that, especially to my white peers who I know are in it for not the right reasons. Like, you shouldn't be in this for a cookie or a fucking trophy. Like, this is serious stuff that affects people's lives. And so I think when it comes to saying things like that, like, I constantly, I say things like that to remind my white peers that, like, just because like you are directly involved in this movement does not mean that your inner work that you are doing to become an ally is done. And that's another thing. Like, allyship is not a word that you can allocate to yourself. It's a title that is given to you by the person or by the minority group or whatever, like, you are working to be an ally towards. And I tell my white peer that all the time. And I tell them, like, when I'm saying, you don't deserve a cookie because you're here at the sit-in with me, or you deserve a cookie, you don't deserve a cookie because you're retweeting things that say Black Lives Matter. It's just like a constant reminder to you that, like, you still have a lot of inner work that needs to be done. It's not enough for you to be not racist. Like, you have to be not racist and actively trying to go against, white supremacy and dismantle it, because I can't do that. White supremacy was created to keep me down. And so you, as a white person, like, you have to take that initiative and can't always constantly be looking for my approval to do things. Like, you just need to do things and get involved because you want to, and not because you're expecting for me to, give you approval. And I know a lot of my, Black friends feel the same way. Like, just because you're not racist doesn't mean anything. Like, you are still a white person, you still benefit from white privilege, and you're still going to continue to benefit from that. And so your job as a white person is to constantly be reminded of that, and also remember to check the lane that you're in, because you could be potentially stepping on the toes of a lot of people who've been doing the work for years and years and years. So yeah, I think that that's something that's really important. It's just constantly remembering, like, why you're in it, and always, like, checking in with yourself to see, like, if you're in it for the right reasons. Because if not, like I said earlier, I don't want you here then, because you're doing more harm than good. So
yeah, thank you for that. And Kendi says in his book, it's not even being not a racist, but an anti-racist, right? That development and willingness to dismantle the white supremacy. So people can say, I'm not racist, I'm not racist. Yeah, but are you an anti-racist?
yeah.
Going over the allyship thing, it's also important. Yes, allyship isn't something you put on yourself. And it's also not a noun, it's a verb. And it comes from actually, like, doing things to help the community you want to be an ally to. And it's not just reposting things or saying that you support a movement. Like, it's like actually doing the work in your personal life. Like, if you can't personally, like, go to protests or donate and stuff like that, that's fine, but you still have a mouth and Google and you can educate the people around you, that your other fellow white peers who are, like, doing or saying racist things or participating in racist things. You can correct them and educate them. And if you're not even checking in on or caring about your Black friends, or not listening to them when they're expressing that, like, something you're doing is not okay, then you're not an ally. So you have a lot more work to do. Also, I had a peer of mine. I was, like, complaining to them, a white peer of mine. I was complaining to them about like some white people said some stuff like on the internet or something, and I was complaining about it and said, like, oh my goodness, like, they have so much work to do or something like that. And this person was like, do I have work to do? And, like, they're, like, pretty good about, like, lots of stuff. Like, they're like an active ally. And I was like, yeah, but that's not bad. Like, you're always gonna have work to do, and that is something you're gonna have to get used to, because, like, you're always gonna be white. So you're always gonna need to know things. And so you should be wanting to continue to learn and continue to get information. And so just because you still have work to do doesn't mean you're a bad ally. You're a great ally. Uh, but I'm not going to give you a cookie for being one thus far. And you're going to still need to work to continue being an even better one every day of your life. And like when I explained it to them, they're like, oh, okay. Cause like at first, because like I try really hard to, cause like I'm a very soft and caring person, so I care about the people around me feelings a lot. But I am trying really hard to work on making sure not to center white feelings in talking about racism, and like trying to sugarcoat things and like make them not feel bad about like doing something that hurt me or hurt my people. And so it's been a lot better, and surprisingly received pretty well. So so I will just be like, yeah, look, like you have work to do. You're always gonna have work to do. I don't feel bad for you. You'll be all right. Trust me. I still love you, but like you'll be okay. They're like, oh, okay. So yeah.
I think it's
No,
great
yeah.
that you can be honest like that. I mean, I think it's really important that you can say, yeah, you got work to do. I mean, I know we both know we've got work to do. It's not over, but no, it's never over. We all are life learners, could. It'd be nice if we were all life learners, right? That we were constantly educating ourselves. You were going to say something, Cherish.
No, I was going to say, I agree. I also wrote a thing about this over the summer, like allyship and talking. And like one of the things I said, like in the article that I wrote, which I actually have a link for that. So if you want to, I'll put it in the chat. Is like talking about how like the road to allyship is never done. Like just like, you know, racism and what that looks like is always changing. So is allyship. So maybe getting on social media and sharing a post was enough 4 years ago. Now that's not enough now you have to be willing to recognize that and continue to go forth and continue to learn like how to be allies to the people that you care about. And you know, I think like one thing that is the most beneficial thing is like accepting the part that like allyship should be something that, or yeah, that allyship should be something that you like have in your life constantly. Like if you know a brand has done something extremely racist towards the minority group that you feel, or towards a group that you are being an ally towards, maybe not support that brand. And be okay with that and understand that that's a part of being an ally. Like, you know, making sure that you're doing things and supporting companies that are inclusive to the people that you care about and to the groups and, you know, to the morals that are important to you. I think people think that allyship stops like once you log off or like once you're out of the presence of your Black friends, but that's not how that works. It should be something that you're always doing. And I feel like that is hard for a lot of people to remember and to continue to act on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree. I think that as a white woman, it's easy to go about my life and not think about it, right? The privileges are there, and I and others take advantage and use it and don't think. And I think that that's part of it, right? That you really being aware of all those privileges that I have and other white individuals have in everyday life. To really get that understanding and awareness to be better allies instead of falling into this, well, life's okay. And yeah, I'm doing these webinars or I'm doing posting stuff or whatever it is. But that the reality is, unless we realize how much privilege we have and how that oppresses others, the country's still going to be stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the attendees, Cherish did post the article that she wrote in the chat. And then I also posted the scaffolding resources that I did not create. I borrowed it. And then the resources for becoming learned and effective allies, I put that in there also. And that's a compilation of people between all these webinars, but also me just throwing things in there from other things. So hopefully the attendees can get that, and then I'll make sure it goes out in an email as well. Do you want that article shared, Cherish? Is that okay if the article goes out as well? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Great.
you. Yeah. Great. Well, so I'd like to ask a very difficult question. Are you all ready? How are you feeling right now?
I would say I'm feeling the same amount of frustration that I felt previously. I'm a little more hopeful about where things could be potentially heading, just because it seems like people are feeling fired up about, things changing. But I feel like that's cautious optimism, because their fires could dwindle and they could leave this and be done. So I feel like I'm experiencing a lot of gray area frustration. Like, I feel frustrated, but I don't really know where the frustration is like coming from, or where it's like necessarily being pointed at. So yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it does.
I feel frustrated a lot of the time, because I have a lot of like conflicting feelings. Like, I'm definitely the type of person that would want to go to a protest immediately. But they didn't really start happening until like COVID, around the same time as COVID. Um, at least not like close to me that I knew of. But I am high risk for COVID, so I'm trying to like just stay in the house. So I can't like go to protests. So that makes me upset that I can't like go out and physically be there and participate in protests. But also at the same time, even if I wasn't, I probably still wouldn't be going because of the safety of it all. Like, it would be a risk on my life to even go to a protest to defend my right for my life. And those feelings are very upsetting. And that just makes me like even more angry about everything that's going on, because it's like I can't even like put put myself out there to go like fight for this without worrying about my life. And then also, like, as far as like posting on social media and stuff, like I've definitely gotten a lot more vocal about things. However, I still find myself like wondering what I should and shouldn't post, because I don't want to put myself in danger or like get doxxed or something like that, or become a target of any type. So it's like it's very frustrating, because this is the time we need to be louder than ever, but it's also because of that we're at the most danger. So having to like balance those two is very upsetting and tiring and irritating. Um so yeah, that's just pretty much how I feel mostly on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I really been very, very moved by your willingness, both of you, to share and to talk about these topics. It's not comfortable for anybody by any means, and the laughter is not to make fun of it. It's just to say, holy shit, this is big stuff. And to be in your 20s, early 20s, and to be experiencing this. All of my children my youngest is 20, and I have a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old, and I raised a 30 and a 32-year-old, and they're all white, and yet very, very much concerned about the safety and well-being of their Black friends, and people who are not friends but Black. And it's just there's a way in which I think the hostility, or the potential for hostility on all sides, is so high right now because of COVID. People have been, quote unquote, locked up in their homes, losing loved ones to the virus, while there have been people locked up in their homes, losing loved ones to being murdered, shot, lynched. And so it makes total sense that you would feel frustrated, you would feel anxious, you would have the feelings that you're having. And despite all that, you showed up for our conversation tonight. And I just really want to thank you for that. And so I would really love just to remind the viewers and anybody who's watching now and anybody who's watching or listening later, that we have a Venmo account that we're building so that we can support our panelists. So Cherish is needing support in her education and her livelihood. And she's going to be a teacher middle school, right? Or middle to high school,
Mhm.
social
Yep.
studies. And Lindsey, you have a new business. Do you want to tell everybody about your new business and how we can find you and support you?
Yes. As you know, I'm a music production and entrepreneurship major. So I have like a good amount of audio experience, and so I recently edited a podcast for my mother. And so I want to start editing podcasts for people. I don't currently have like my official business name set up, because I want to like kind of just take the legal measures to get my business name before putting like any social media to it or anything. So I'm just working through my regular Instagram right now. And I'm looking for clients. If you have a podcast or anything of that nature that needs like some audio editing, if you want me to just like put pieces together, edit out your add music, pretty much anything you can think of, contact me on Instagram. My regular Instagram is at Luna _et _stelle, like moon and stars in Latin. If that helps, and I will put it in the chat. But yeah, so you can just message me there. I will edit your podcast.
Great. Yeah. And if you know, and if those who are listening or watching know people who could benefit from Lindsey's expertise, because it sounds like mom was pretty happy with the podcast.
Oh yeah.
So she's good at it. She's good at it. I mean, no,
Yeah.
mom's not being biased. I've met mom. She's not being
She was totally she lets me know if she's not happy with something. So
She would
very
totally
unbiased.
let you know. I mean, I haven't known your mom long, but she would so let you know if she didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, is there anything else either of you or Jodi would like to say to people listening or watching?
Sorry, I'm putting my thing in the chat.
That's okay.
I just recently finished a book called Why All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria. It's a great book. Talks about race dynamics in schools, obviously, because that's my thing. So I would definitely say that that is a wonderful COVID read while you're stuck at home. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Would you put the name of that in the chat and the author, if you know the author's name? That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
And I can add that to my resources too. And I know a lot of educators. In fact, I believe your mom is listening right now, and she was an educator as well. So hopefully, we'll get that book name out there. Thank you for that, Cherish. Lindsey, anything else you want to add?
I guess I would just add, since we're on the topic of books, I think that every white person in existence should read the book White Fragility. Kind of just goes into why you feel certain types of ways when race is brought up and why it's uncomfortable and why you react certain ways and how that can be damaging, and just to learn more. So
fabulous. Thank you. And I know that we have some attendees right now. I don't know if any of you have any questions you'd like to put in the chat. We've got a few more minutes to entertain questions or thoughts or appreciation for our panelists. Yeah, I guess, there was one other question. I know we've talked to Lindsey about it, and you guys don't have to answer this. You identify as queer, is that right? Or no? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So we're four queers. Yeah. Well, I have to say, I am so proud and amazed. As an educator and as a mom, I'm allowed to say this, but if I'm not, you just tell me that I'm not. But I'm just from a mother perspective and an educator perspective, I am so proud of both of you. It blows me away what you're willing to share and how you are so strong in your personalities and your convictions and your leadership skills. I can see, Cherish, you're going to be an amazing teacher. It is just so beautiful to have met you tonight. And Lindsey, I already loved you because I met you once before. I fell in love fast. And it's just, I really, and I don't want to discredit my falling in love. It's important, especially you're special people. You're really two beautiful, special people. So I, from the bottom of my heart and all of me that has feelings, just want to thank you for showing up with us tonight.
I want to echo.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I want to echo that. I really appreciate you both being here, and I'm so impressed with your wisdom, your ability to articulate and share your experiences and your thoughts.
At such a young age.
Yes. Yeah. It's individuals like you all that this country needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to wave goodbye and say goodbye to our live audience and our recording. And then I'd like to ask my Lindsey and Cherish, to keep calling you Nicole, Lindsey and Cherish, to stay on. But thank you to the attendees also for being here. Again, you'll get an email afterwards, probably in a day or two, as a follow-up with all the resources that were in the chat, as well as, again, the contact information for Lindsey. And then you can read the book, the article, story, paper that Cherish wrote. And then if you want to contribute to the Venmo account, that would be wonderful as well. And yeah, and then it'll be on YouTube for people to watch and share with other friends. We would love to be able to give more attention to people of color. So if you're able to get the word out about these webinars, they are now happening the third Sunday of every month. We found Fridays were a little challenging for people after a week of work, although heck, challenge, discomfort. Why didn't we just keep it there? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so that's all. So we'll wave goodbye to everybody. Thank you, everyone.